Hi, I'm Laurence Russell from Satellite Evolution Group. I'm here at Satellite 2023. I'm here with Lukas Nyström from Satcube. Lukas, how's the show going so far?
The show is good. It's busy as always. A lot of meetings, a lot of running around, but the interest for the terminal has been good. We've had several interesting conversations with partners. So far so good.
Fantastic. Talking about that kind of demand, we've been hearing about LEO for years, but what problems does the market segment face? What solutions are needed to ensure its economic health in the years ahead?
Yeah, so we of course we talk a lot with the LEO operators, and one of the key issues is that the space segment is operational and it's working as intended, but there are limitations on the ground segment, primarily on the terminal sides. So there is a massive allocation of resources to the space, but not to the user side. So that means that the terminals are not really up to standards. They are either a bit too expensive, or typically they're too bulky, or they drive too much power. So you have the phased arrays are good in some aspects, but they tend to consume a lot of power, for example. So then you have thermal issues, and then you have degradations for scanning. So those are just some of the issues that we're seeing that we're trying to overcome.
All right, very interesting. So you're hoping to serve people like Starlink, OneWeb, Kuiper. What's your assessment of their current progression and their future potential?
I think that all of them will have their niche. So Starlink, of course, they have a very large customer base already. OneWeb has nice polar coverage. They are now launching the last couple of satellites in a couple of weeks from now, more targeting enterprise customers. So all of them will have their niche, and I think all of them will prosper and thrive. There are some difficulties and challenges in how those networks are being built and what that means in terms of the terminals themselves. So for example, I talked about the scan losses or the issues for low elevations of phased arrays. And that's even more pronounced for, let's say, OneWeb, for example, because then there are less satellites, so you need to scan much further down towards the horizon. And then you have that translates to a worse link budget performance at low elevation angles. So the way that we're seeing is that for Starlink, it's more appropriate maybe to have, in some aspects, a phased array or a flat panel where you can do electronic scanning. Whereas for OneWeb, it starts to become a challenge from a purely financial perspective, because you want to get as much throughput as possible through your network. And then if you have terminals where they only operate well at bore site, but then once you start scanning, you lose a lot of the performance. So that means that for OneWeb, at least according to us, it's probably more appropriate to do more of the traditional mechanically steered terminals to ensure that you have proper coverage across the globe for all elevation angles. Have more of a seamless user experience where it doesn't oscillate with the positioning of the satellite.
Right, assuming all of those things can be achieved, what's your prediction for the LEO market 10 years from now? What's going to happen?
So I think that we're going to see a lot higher volumes in terms of users and in terms of terminals. And that means that we need to design for terminals that are easy to mass produce. We can't do these what's a lot of current terminals, you have a lot of tweaks or specific customizations for small sub-niche groups. There is a customer maybe that wants a specific color or some different type of connector because they have a specific modem. When we do these large hundreds of thousands of terminals, we need to ensure that we have a much more streamlined organization where we can use one production line to actually roll out a very large sort of one-size-fits-all terminal. Because that's the only way to drive down cost. Customization is good for the user if it doesn't drive cost, but in this case it is going to do so inevitably. So we need to find a standardization of a terminal that just fits everyone, or at least their needs to an adequate extent.
All right, here's hoping. Onwards and upwards. Thank you very much for your time, Lukas.